What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Show, aka the Power Rankings Podcast. How about I lean into the camera and do the whole show like this? That's not annoying at all. Yeah,
not at all.
Not at all. That voice you hear is the man in navy blue. That's Marcus Mosher, who's he's not only a football aficionado, but a refs complainer and a fancy pants coffee drinker now. So, yes, I see your brew. It looks beautiful. Now I kind of miss the guy that
I got some foam in my mustache. It's really good right now.
I miss the guy that like 4 years ago was tweeting about Jason Garrett's second down runs with 9 in the box. And, just the guy that used to have to shovel ice off his driveway. Now you have somebody to do that. You pay,
my wife. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I haven't changed at all. I just improved my coffee taste over the last couple of years. When you sit in front of a computer all day long, you need something to power you through. So that's Nespresso for you. That's not an ad read. That's just an honest review.
Yeah, I'm really wanting to talk here. I'm dressed today. Like I look like maybe part of a gang in a Western that just tried to clean up because we're going to have a dance in town square.
Yeah, I thought you see the leather jacket, you'd be like in Greece. It'll be perfect.
Yeah. Well, it's called a Henley, what I'm wearing. It dates back to the Western days, if you must know. But yeah, there you go.
This is Under Armour. So there you go.
Yeah, sweet. This is a great start. So what we're doing here, I'm Elliot Harrison. He's Marcus Mosher. We're ranking teams today. That's what we do on this podcast on Tuesdays. And, it's a little interesting this week because we finally have some, not just like playoff implications, we have playoff ramifications. We kind of know where most teams are going to be. I don't want to say we're out of the COVID haze. We're not, but we're kind of out of the part of the season where COVID affects everybody's playoff race. Like we're finally pulling out of that. At least it feels like we are. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and I think with the new guidelines, it makes this if you have a star player that tests positive for COVID, like on a Monday, it seems like they're way more likely to be back into the lineup. However, Elliot, we're starting to see like pretty major effects from guys that come back the same week they test positive for COVID, like Carson Wentz, right? He tested positive on Monday, came back on Sunday and looked awful. If that's going to be the case throughout the playoffs, then this is going to be a very, very unusual playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of already has been an unusual season and everything, but I can't get used to you right now. Usually you kind of got the spike going, but the headphones are pulling your hair back. I'm used to your Billy Idol look, the blonde. Do you frost your tips?
In ninth grade, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But listen, this is just a new look. New year, new me.
My best friend used to do hair or my best friend did do hair. But he
was all self-conscious about my hair. My God.
But I used to tell him, like, can we just put one highlight? And he goes, what? I said, I want one highlight. And he goes, you want one highlight in your hair? He goes, you're going to sit under the thing. I go, huh? And so we would pick one random splotch in my hair to do. Yeah.
We're 5 minutes in. We have not talked about football once. This is horrendous.
That's not true. We talked about Carson Wentz. I have a couple things to get to, but you want to go ahead and get out your complaining now? Can we just do it now?
No, I don't have anything to complain about. I'm very happy today, Elliot.
Oh, because you've gotten all your venom out on Twitter.
Well, we'll save it. We'll save it. Well, not just officiating, but also the travesty that we saw last night. That is just a stupid game. But we'll talk about the Steelers and the Browns here in a little bit.
I think I'm going to let you talk about that.
Okay, it's fine.
I don't So last night I did not get to watch the Browns Steelers game, and Marcus called me, gleefully called me to not to discuss, hey, I think we saw kind of the end of a Hall of Fame career last night. He called me to gleefully report Ben Roethlisberger's horrible numbers. So would you like to review them for the class?
Yeah, I mean, both these quarterbacks were just absolutely atrocious. But Ben Roethlisberger in his final game in Pittsburgh, 24-46 for 123 yards, 2.7 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He had a 12 quarterback rating, and somehow he wasn't even the worst quarterback on the field in this game.
Yeah, how do those numbers compare to Baker?
Baker's 16 of 38 for 185 yards. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 9 sacks, a QBR of 14.
And I was going to say, isn't that really the glaring issue here? 2 things. Najee Harris had a big game. Also, the sack differential in this game was 7, -7 for the Browns. I'm not one of these people that overrate sacks, but if you have a -7 sack differential, you pretty much never win.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that. I don't have the exact numbers on that. Wouldn't that be a fun?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing I would say about those sacks. I would say half of them were because of poor offensive linemen. They had a 4th-round rookie right tackle out there who should have never played, and they never helped him. I believe they gave help to him twice on 81 plays. Yesterday. You can't do that. And then there was a few where Baker was just holding onto the ball far, far too long. Guys were open. They announced today that Baker's out for the rest of the season. He's going to have shoulder surgery.
How nice of them.
But
I'm sure he just injured that last night, of course, right?
Yeah, it's just the whole Cleveland season was so weird. I don't know.
I agree. It was. Well, I'm glad to see that Kevin Stefanski has been reminded to get back to your roots, which are sometimes you don't send 5 guys out in the pass route. You help out and you max protect. That's a little bit old school. Back in the day, they used to send 2 or 3 guys out in the route, even on 3rd down. And a lot of times you max protect, or at least you try to. And it's kind of like what I was saying with you at the beginning of the podcast. I miss the guy who used to shovel his driveway and tweet about Jason Garrett and just drink regular old coffee. But now you're Brad Pitt's a spokesman now. I'm sure that's why you got an espresso. And, I think that's great. I mean, I'm glad that you've become chic. What's next? Are you going to start wearing kind of those? Is it Ben Sherman? Who does the London style slim fit? Are you going to start going with slim fit?
Absolutely no idea. No. So you'll have to educate me on that.
The shirts where it looks like your buttons are hanging on for dear life.
You would know. You would know.
I was on the air with Delaney Walker one time, and Delaney is like super stylish, right? And Delaney's, he's pretty jacked, man. Delaney was, H-back, tight end, right? And he asked me my opinion, and I told him, I go, Delaney, I don't know, but your buttons look like they literally are hanging on for their last days on earth. Like this shirt was so tight, man. Oh, dude.
Speaking of hanging on for the dear life, Trent Baalke in the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Is he going to keep his job there as a general manager?
I don't know. His reputation isn't very good. I think most people became familiar with Trent Baalke. I don't know if that was your way of segueing me into the bottom of the power rankings. But we might as well start there because the Jags are 32. But to answer your question specifically, I think he really got into the football fans' consciousness when there was the kind of 2014 debacle with Jim Harbaugh. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
I mean, the 49ers had been to 3 consecutive NFC championship games, 11, 12, and 13. They made the Super Bowl in 12. They should have won in 11. 13 was that great game against Seattle, came down to a pass deflection in the end zone. So they were a great team, and their internal strife did as much to derail that 2014 team than I think anything.
I agree. I don't know how he keeps his job after this year, but we'll see.
I think as a GM, one of your first priorities has to be to not allow for internal strife to wreck the building, right? And so not sure that that's really the same issue with the Jaguars, but the Jaguars looked awful against the Patriots. If you didn't see any of that game, I don't blame you. It was so bad I didn't even watch it. And that's when you know it's really bad.
Yes.
The Patriots won 50-10. Can you pronounce the Jaguars' leading rusher without looking?
I
know you're looking.
No. It's Dare something. I don't remember how to say his last name, so I can't do it.
You want me to give it a try?
Give it the old college try.
You give it the old college try. By the way, in that game, there's like nothing statistically to pull. I'm talking about rushing leader, but if you look at any of the stats from the game, it's just all bad. Yeah. It's just all bad. All bad. Every, and they thought the thought that Urban Meyer leaving was actually going to make that team better. It hasn't.
They're going to beat the Colts this week, by the way, though. I'm just telling you.
I think it's Ogunbowale.
There you go. That's good. It's a good guess.
You know, I don't know if you saw, but Raquel Armstead also had a nice little game. Yeah. But you know who had a decent game? Again, Laquan Treadwell. There's your one bright spot for the Jaguars. Let's get off the Jaguars. Let's go straight to 31, which are the New York Giants. Another team where there's so much circling the management structure, right? A lot of people want the GM gone. Joe Judge, the head coach, if you didn't see it, had one of the more odd answers to a question you've seen in a press conference, claiming that Giants players were calling him, wanting to get back on the team. Your thoughts?
I mean, as a Cowboy fan, I hope he stays because I think he's one of the worst coaches in the NFL. We're two full years in now, and the Giants are further away from competing for NFC East championships than they were when he got hired. So I think they would be foolish to bring him back.
I don't want to pile on because I told you offline, people really making a big deal out of this. But, you know, when you're 4-12 and you've been outscored by over 140 points on the season, like, I don't know that people are begging. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea if you have some golf bags, because I think that was one of his comments is that you don't see any golf bags out in front of the lockers. Maybe the players need some stress relief.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
I agree.
I think putt-putt, by the way, is a great way to do stress relief. I can't talk, but I feel like putt-putt's really gone downhill over the last 10 to 20 years. It worked for Ralph Macchio. Didn't he do that at golf and stuff with,
Yeah, I think Top Golf has really replaced that, where you just basically go to a driving range and you hit the balls for 2 hours and you're done. Right?
Yeah, that's where people go to like the bar. It's like a discotheque.
Yeah,
that's what I would say. That's what like rural guys that, you know, switch from black to navy and get espressos do. But I did for the rest of us, we just go to putt-putt. Panthers at 30, another team where there's not a lot of, I don't think a lot of confidence in the management structure, especially not with Matt Rule. I know people are speculating on whether he would survive the season, but they have not looked good for several weeks now, although this game was closer than others.
I mean, it was, but they still totaled 178 yards of offense in this game.
Yeah.
Like, this team is broken. They need to reset. They need a new quarterback. They need a new face to the franchise, and it's not Matt Rule. Sorry, Panther fans.
Yeah, and I was going to say that wasn't with PJ. That wasn't with Cam. That was with Sam Darnold, and not good. Not as good a game for number 29, Houston Texans, Davis Mills. Not a lot of offense for them. San Francisco kind of had their way. This game was really more about Trey Lance. Early in the game, I thought the Texans might give them a game, but they just didn't seem to have the personnel that could match up.
I agree. Brandon Cooks makes a big difference, though. He came back, played really, really well in this one. Just a good receiver, and I kind of hope he gets moved this offseason to a better offense.
To another team. I mean, how many teams?
I mean, I just think he's been on a lot, but like there's some teams that I think you add him to, and all of a sudden he makes the offense so much better. Like, imagine him in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Like, that'd be a perfect fit. That's where I'd like to see him go.
You know, there actually is precedent with a guy like Brandon Cooks. There was a guy named Tommy McDonald. He played in the 50s and 60s. He's in the Hall of Fame. You might have seen his Hall of Fame speech. He brought out a jam box and danced to it.
Yep.
But Tommy McDonald was a great player, but for some reason he went from Philadelphia to the Rams, Philadelphia, the Cowboys, the Rams, the Falcons, the Browns, but he was a Hall of Fame player. And I don't know that Brandon Cooks is going to make the Hall of Fame, but he's certainly going to make Hall of Very Good. Mm-hmm. That's for sure. Detroit Lions at 28, This was a game I thought that they would cover. I did not foresee Jared Goff not playing. They did not get good quarterback play in this game, and then Seattle just had their way with them. I bet you didn't watch one play of this game.
Not true. I did watch it all on Monday, just not live. Just really quick thing I'd say, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the rookie receiver they got from USC, they're using him a lot in like the Robert Woods role that the Rams have used him before. I think that's perfect for him. That was kind of the comp coming out of college for him. Another game over 100 yards. I think they found a keeper at receiver.
So we're no longer on the Khalif Raymond.
No, but I think Woods is a player that you can build around. And I think between Swift, Brown, and Hawkinson, it's not a great passing offense, but hey, it's guys that you can win games with.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, though, when you give up 497 yards of offense, it's going to be hard on your offense for sure. Mm-hmm. And Seattle got it going. New York Jets at 27, they had it going. They had Tampa Bay kind of on the ropes. Obviously, this game is known for a different reason. We'll get to that, but eventually here. But Tom Brady brought him back in the last couple of minutes. Do you see hope for this Jets team between Zach Wilson and a defense that was really bad earlier in the year that's maybe getting a little better?
Yeah, I do. I think it also lines up with the draft, right? Like they have 2 top 10 picks right now. There's in Seattle. They really need edge rushers, and this is a really good edge rushing draft. So I think if they can nail those picks, they can nail free agency. Carl Lawson, who they signed to a major contract to this offseason, never played a snap. I think they have the pieces to, I don't know, maybe be a 7-10 win team next year. It's not great, but it would be an upgrade for them.
You know, I think a lot of people talked about Elijah Moore. I think the Jets have some good skill pieces. I know you're not a big running backs guy, but I think their running backs, some of them actually played decently at times this year. Michael Carter has had his moments. I'm actually looking at the stats here this year. Ty Johnson caught 34 balls for him. Carter caught 36 balls for him. We've seen Braxton Berrios make some plays for this team. Mm-hmm. They're not the well isn't empty, right? The cupboard isn't empty with this team. It's not bare. I'm trying to get in every possible cliche I can get in. And I just couldn't fit them all in. But I think there's some hope there. The Atlanta Falcons at 26 had their chances. There was a really weird sequence in this game where I want to say the Falcons were down 1 score. Matt Ryan runs. It looks like he scored a touchdown, but I think they ruled he gave himself up and that he was down at like the 1 foot line. But then he gets up, he mouths off to the Bills defensive back, and they call him for taunting. They take it back 15 yards, and then they throw a couple incompletions. They end up losing the game. Did you see this sequence?
Yeah, I did. It was really unfortunate because they were hanging around in this game. Like they had their chances to win it. Josh Allen had 3 interceptions in this game. They had an opportunity to win, and the sequence you are talking about was the difference here.
The one question I have for you, does this game say more about the Falcons or more about the Bills?
Oh, more about the Bills. I don't trust this team at all.
Yeah, we're going to get there. Seattle Seahawks at 25. They had the big win against the Lions. It's kind of one of those games that it feels good. Obviously, it feels good if you're a fan. You've seen your Seahawks play poorly for weeks, but it's obviously too little too late. And you're beating up on one of the down teams in the league with their backup quarterback. But, you know, we've all been through that when our team stinks, you know, and they get a big win at the end of the year. I've lived through the 2004 Cowboys and the 97 Cowboys, and unfortunately the 89 Cowboys that went 1-15. Any takeaways for the Seahawks for you?
That's Russell Wilson's last game with the Seahawks in Seattle. Way to go out with a bang, right?
You're sure of that?
Oh, I'm just saying.
Or did you say if? I didn't know if I heard
if.
Okay.
We threw a big party for Ben last night, and he hasn't even announced it.
Oh, boy. Okay, can we wait? Can you just
Go ahead. I was just saying that was the best I've seen Russell Wilson look since week 1 or week 2. It was good. Nice to see him back.
Courtney, will you switch the rundown? I can't listen to any more of this. Thank you. Washington Football Club, they hung tight with Philadelphia. They were winning. Again, this was another game, at least for me, that I was wondering if Washington was going to pull this out. I told you on our picks pod that I really thought Washington was going to be game this week. I picked Philly to win, but Washington to cover. The end of the game, though, got all the pub. I mean, that stadium, dude, how much have we seen?
It's a dump.
You know, we got plumbing problems. You know, if you wanted poop to rain on you, we had that. this year. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. It was disgusting. It was sewer water spraying in one of the suites. Then you had the stands fall over. If you haven't seen this video, I tweeted it out. A lot of people have tweeted it out, but if you just want a quick place to go to Harrison NFL. That shocked me. I'm watching the video. I'm like, what am I watching here? It's just a dude walking in the locker room. I thought he handled it pretty well.
Yeah, they also, Taylor Heineke found a pair of scissors on the field this year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's another embarrassing look for Washington. I really don't know what else to say.
Well, supposedly they've got things worked out, or they're working things out with their new brand going forward. I didn't know if you saw that tweet, but it's out there. But you were probably so busy complaining about Sean Hockley, I don't know, or whoever else. I don't even know. Let's go to the Broncos at 23. This was a game you thought the Broncos would be game in, and they couldn't hang. The Chargers actually played the kind of game you've been wanting the Chargers to play.
Yep. We'll talk about the Chargers in a little bit, but it feels almost inevitable that Vic Fangio is going to be gone after this year, and that they're going to have a new quarterback. The question,
is that fair to you?
Yeah,
is that fair?
Yes. Fangio's had time there. I think he's a little too old school to be a head coach anymore. A fantastic defensive coordinator. It's just not working. Like, his style coaching for a team is not what it takes to win in the NFL. So I think he needs to go back, be a defensive coordinator, just settle into that role for the rest of your career, and you'll be fine. But back to the actual Broncos, their biggest question is, are they just a quarterback and a head coach away, or are there other significant changes this roster needs? Because a couple of weeks ago, I thought, you put a top 15 quarterback on this team, and that's a playoff team. Now I'm not so sure. They've got some pretty big other holes in this roster that they need to figure out.
Well, I would say this, Marcus. Could you upgrade from Vic Fangio? Yes. Could you downgrade? Yes.
But you're right. You are right. But I think you kind of know what Vic Fangio is. Like, he's probably not going to be ever enough to win you the AFC West, and let alone win a Super Bowl. So I would rather gamble on somebody else that can maybe get me over the hump.
If you told someone the Broncos were 7-7 with Teddy Bridgewater and the third best defense in the league in points allowed, I think, at the time they were actually first.
Yeah.
I think every Broncos fan would have taken that. Well, then you didn't have Bridgewater and you had to play Drew Lock. Okay. I think all things considered, 7-9 was pretty good for this team. I like Teddy Bridgewater, but did I think Teddy Bridgewater was going to lift this team like Joe Burrow's lifted the Bengals? No, I didn't think the Broncos were going to finish, unless you did. I didn't think the Broncos were going to go 10-7 this year.
But it's kind of the point, right? Like, we've had Vic Fangio, was it 3 years now? And it's kind of been the same story every year. They don't make the playoffs. Yes, they're competitive, but not good enough. It's just not the league that we can play in if you're the Broncos. You've got to be able to compete for division titles, and they haven't.
Isn't that kind of on the Hall of Fame executive, though?
Absolutely.
A little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Minnesota Vikings at 22, ugly game. Obviously not what the NFL wanted on Sunday night. Kirk Cousins been taking it on the chin now for better part of a week. I don't really know what to say about this team. This could be another team that we see some major changes in the offseason. How do you see Kirk Cousins? Because I hate to say it's been a failure. I've seen Kirk Cousins play some really high-level football for Minnesota, especially against New Orleans in that playoff game a few years ago. It's just so doggone up and down.
It is. I just think the pairing of Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins was kind of doomed to start. Zimmer didn't want him. Kevin Stefanski did, who was there when they first signed him to a deal, and he's been good enough. I think Minnesota needs some kind of divorce between these two. I don't know which one they're going to pick. My gut is probably Cousins.
Yeah.
But if it was me, I think probably a total reset would be the way to go. I think you can still trade Cousins for multiple first-round picks. You move on, you get somebody else, and you draft a new quarterback. I think that's probably the direction I would go.
There's some good veteran talent on this roster. Mm-hmm. I think the time for this team to win is now. Yeah. It really is. When you look at, for example, the running back position, Dalvin Cook, we don't see running backs putting up huge numbers at 28, 29 years old. The time is now for Thielen, for Jefferson, for Cook. And then on defensive side of the ball, they actually have some older veterans. So it'll be interesting to see if they try to keep this team intact and just make a change at head coach or what they do.
I've got a question really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zimmer's going to get fired here. And it seems like that's what the broadcast was hinting at the whole time. You know, he's been there for a long time. Do you think Mike Zimmer gets another head coaching job this year? Or do you think he has to go be a defensive coordinator for somebody?
Oh, man, I think taking a break would be one way to go about it. Kind of seeing what the lay of the land is over the next year. Mike Zimmer doesn't have to work right away. That's what I would recommend for him. There's been plenty of coaches that have done it. Mike McCarthy did it. Pete Carroll did it. Very successful coaches. I'll say this, though. Mike Zimmer's been a heck of a defensive coordinator in the NFL. He has had some great units in Cincinnati. He had a number one defense on the Cowboys as well. So, that defense probably lifted Bill Parcells' first Cowboys team to the playoffs. They went to the playoffs with Troy Hambrick and Quincy Carter. I know I'm teaching you Cowboys history here, but don't forget those Cincinnati teams either, though, that played well. That's a really interesting question. I think either a break or defensive coordinator. Yeah, I don't see him going back to an NFL head coaching role right away. But what about you? Do you think a team would give him that opportunity right away?
I do, because I think there's a couple teams where he could come in and just be like, for the lack of a better word, the grown up in the room, like some organizations that just needs some stability, like Jacksonville. Like if they had Zimmer as their coach, I think it's not a home run hire, but can he get them to be a respectable franchise? I could see that. The Raiders are the same way. Like I think Zimmer with the Raiders would make a lot of sense. So I do think he's going to get another chance.
But in that vein, you're kind of talking about a Vic Fangio style hire, although he's
been successful, right? That's
higher pedigree, admittedly. Yep. And I don't know how many teams are going that route versus trying to find the next Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan.
I think it depends on the team, right? Like Jacksonville, they just need somebody that can stabilize things for a little bit, right?
I mean, dude, they went off the grid, though. I mean, with Jacksonville, like they're so hard to compare, right? Because
that's a situation that I think Zimmer would make some sense, though, right?
Okay, I'm down with that. I'm not a Mike Zimmer hater at all.
Yeah, neither am I.
He's taking it on the chin all year. I don't know how many coaches would have. Well, they did not look good Sunday night. Although the Bradbury play was very fun. Chicago Bears at 21. They get another victory. This is another team. We can talk about the head coach, but this is another team where I would say that really the front office is a big deal with this team as well.
Do you know who misses Vic Fangio? That'd be the Chicago Bears, right?
Yes.
They were a much better team when Fangio was the defensive coordinator. They're going to be moving on from Matt Nagy here at this time next week. I'll be curious to see what they do with the head coach spot.
I will as well. But, and I know when you have a team, you root for a team and they have a bad record, it's become a new kind of vogue thing to root for them to lose so you can get a higher pick. When I was growing up and coming up in this industry, people didn't do that, but I see that more and more that people don't want their team to win. I don't know how you feel about that. I think it's
we'll talk about that when it comes to the Eagles. I want to talk about that in a little bit. So
okay, Miami Dolphins at 20. I think this had to be one of your more disappointing performances of the week, right? You thought they would be game against Tennessee. Yeah. Look, they put together 7 straight wins, but a lot of those wins were against competition that wasn't great. Mm-hmm. They went up against a good football team at their place and they got handled.
Yeah. And we were afraid of the offensive defensive line mismatch in this one. And it came true, right? Like Miami's offensive line just couldn't hold up. And until they fix their offensive line, they're always going to be a good team, but not a great team.
Well, they're going to be home for the playoffs, as are the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, we talked a little bit off the top about that game. What a weird year it's been for Cleveland. I like Kevin Stefanski. This is not a spot where I expect to see a kind of change. I think really what people are looking at more is Baker. I understand Baker Mayfield didn't play well against Green Bay. He didn't play, obviously, well Monday night. I just want to reiterate again, if a guy is immediately going to miss next week and it's already been announced now, and we already know he's going to go in for surgery, what's that tell you about what he's been playing through? And what I've seen with him, I saw it against Green Bay. I've seen his offensive linemen pick him up, like literally physically pick him up to help him up. Everybody knows he's laying it out there for the team. Where do you think this team goes in the offseason? Do you think Baker, by the way, his future in Cleveland is cloudy at best?
Yeah, I do. I think much like some of the other spots we were talking about, I think a divorce feels imminent, right? Like they need somebody different. This is 4 years now of Baker. And I think at his best, he's a top 15 quarterback. At his worst, he looks like a backup. And I think the Cleveland Browns roster is ready to compete now. This is a spot where I would not be surprised at all, Elliot, if we see a swap between the Vikings and the Browns. Like, I think you put Kirk Cousins on this team, they're right back to being a playoff team. And I think that would make a lot of sense. I would not be surprised if Cleveland explores something like that.
Boy, that is an interesting proposition. I think the problem with Baker Mayfield is that you haven't seen a progression. Right. Baker Mayfield played pretty well as a rookie quarterback. I thought he made some strides, and then it's just kind of flattened out. And then with all the injuries this year, I really don't think this year was a fair evaluation of him as a player. It's so easy for fans to just sit there and say, yeah, so he's playing hurt. Everyone's playing hurt. No, it doesn't quite work like that. That's why he's being sat down. But I tend to agree with you. I do think the Browns have a good team, and I do think they're not going to go back to the same old Browns. It's not going to be the Brandon Weeden, Trent Richardson Browns. At least I certainly hope not. Pittsburgh Steelers at 18, they got the win. Marcus called me. He was very happy. You were a little emotional about it being Ben's last game. Do you want to talk about that and how it made you feel as a man?
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that because I had zero feelings at all. So let's just say the Steelers still have a chance to make the playoffs. What they would need is they need to beat Baltimore, and they need the Colts to lose to Jacksonville. Is there any chance the Colts lose to Jacksonville in Jacksonville this week?
No, I know they've had trouble, but no, I'm not buying that. One point though worth making. Yeah. Do you feel like Najee Harris has kind of been underrated, not in the fantasy sphere, because he's had so many touches, and unfortunately all the fantasy leagues play PPR, which I think is so bunk, but that's an argument for another day.
Yeah, I think he's been really good this year. I do.
Because of Mac Jones, because of Jamar Chase, because of Micah Parsons.
Yeah, he's been good.
Yeah, he's been really good. And, I think he's a good little player, and he's a building block for them, irrespective of the position he plays, Marcus,
I agree. I just want one more thing before we move on.
Yeah.
All day today, all we heard about was Mike Tomlin, another season of not having a losing record. And hey, that's great. I just think that stuff is a little overrated, right? Like, is the goal for a coach to just not have losing seasons, or is it to be in the playoffs and win playoff games? Because, Elliot, I'm going to read you all the names of the coaches who have won playoff games since 2016. Okay. These are the list. All righty.
Hey, Courtney, can I just throw, I know we don't have the stay away graphic built for this show, but I really would love to run it. Stay away from the next 30 seconds because it's heavily biased data.
It is. That's fine.
Go ahead.
Since 2016, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Bruce Arians, Doug Peterson, Sean Payton, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Sean McDermott, Mike Vrabel, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Zimmer, Doug Marrone, Dan Quinn, Mike Mularkey, Jason Garrett, Pete Carroll, Anthony Lynn, Bill O'Brien, John Harbaugh, Frank Wright, and Kevin Stefanski. No Mike Tomlin. It's just interesting the way that we don't give credit to guys like Mike Vrabel for another double-digit win season.
Oh, I think Vrabel's getting credit, but listen, I agree with you. When it comes to head coach and quarterback, you just kind of want to go, 10-6, 9-7 every year. Yeah, I agree. There's some darling players and coaches who probably, I agree. I think we're going to get to one actually coming up, maybe. See how unbiased.
Listen, I know how much you hate the analytic community in Harbaugh. So why don't we go ahead and get there at number 17?
Oh, you remember remember last week? You're like, I'm out on Ravens culture.
I'm out on Ravens culture.
The Ravens,
they played well this way. They played well this week.
They did, but they had just a terrible final sequence.
Yeah.
Tyler Huntley felt Von Miller coming. Von Miller came screaming around the tackle, but it was kind of a deep drop. Huntley was going to step up. I don't think Von Miller would have sacked him. I think he would have gone right around him, or Huntley would have shook him off, but his back plant foot slipped on him, and they lost, I want to say 10, 12 yards on the play. The clock ran, and they didn't even have a chance. Before that play, they had a chance, because you think about, who their kicker is and so forth.
Yeah.
But any other thoughts about that game other than me circling that one play? I thought they actually played pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah, I don't know if they could have played a better game with the talent that they had out there. I wish they would have done one little pop pass to Mark Andrews in the red zone or in the end zone on that last series. But
yeah,
I get why they played it the way they did.
Yeah, Greg Olson did a good job on the broadcast showing the route. Mark Andrews had about a step and a half. You just lay the ball out there, and Mark Andrews was shaking his head on the sideline, and
they missed
it was a missed opportunity. But you know what, man? Tyler Huntley's a backup. Like, the Ravens are playing without Lamar Jackson, who is a former MVP. Huntley's played pretty well, but I think Huntley played so well that now we just expect the Ravens to be the Ravens.
Right.
He's not the same guy. It was a good game. I think a lot of people thought the Rams were going to walk all over them. That did not happen. Let's go to 16 here, get off the Ravens and the Steelers. And, when it comes to the Raiders, you might say, hey, man, the Raiders are not as good as the Ravens are. Well, the Raiders keep finding ways at the end of games. And there's something kind of cheesy about that, because it's very simple analysis, but you just have to watch this team, because when they need plays from Derek Carr, they get it. When they need a play from their pass rush, they get it. And I've told you a lot of times this year, the way to beat the Raiders is to run right at them. Well, that didn't happen in this game.
It didn't. The Raiders, they've got a win-in-game situation here in Week 18 against the Chargers, and it's really interesting when it comes to their future, because if they win this game, they've won 4 straight games. Rich Bisaccia will have led them to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Do you give them the head coaching job, or do you still look elsewhere? Because I don't know how to feel about this team, because they were dead in the water a few weeks ago. And if they make the playoffs, the first winning season since 2016, I don't know how you don't at least give them a chance.
I would absolutely retain him. Yeah. What teams are always doing is trying to find that next guy, but inevitably only 1 or 2 teams out of the what do you think the average is? 6 to 8 teams every year.
Yeah.
If they're not firing their head coach or contemplating it based on who's out there, and the percentages just aren't in your favor. So if you have a guy who's already proven it that he can get this team to play for him, why not give him 2 years? Give him a chance.
I got another name though.
Okay.
You tell me. I got a report today that Jim Harbaugh interested in that job with the Raiders.
Oh, well, that changes things a little bit.
It does change things, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. It's not just that Jim Harbaugh did a great job with that 49ers team, because in 2010 they were nowheresville. Mm-hmm. And in 2011, he had them in the NFC Championship. And as mentioned earlier, they really should have won that championship game. And I think they would have won the Super Bowl as well. What he did for Alex Smith, Alex Smith was a totally different player before Jim Harbaugh got there. Derek Carr is way better than Alex Smith was in 2010, for sure. But do I think he could enhance Alex Smith's game more than John Gruden did? I do.
Don't forget, that's where he started coaching in 2003. He's got some ties to that Raider organization. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, I'm down with you. Saints at 15, they got a big win that they needed, but right now they are tussling with the 49ers for a playoff spot. You think the Saints get it?
I do, actually. I really do. And I kind of want them to, because they're just a really old school football team that just plays defense. They run the heck out of the ball. And if you are the Bucs and that's the team you face in the first round of playoffs, with no Antonio Brown, with no Chris Godwin, no Leonard Fournette, you got to be so terrified. Give it to me. I give it to me.
Boy, that's a heck of a matchup. It really is. I'm just looking at the Saints numbers from this week, only 73 yards on the ground, but I think more concerning for them. And some of this is skewed because you have the Ian Book game in there, but 280 yards of offense this week. They had 164 with the in book last week. They had 212 against the Bucks the week before. Granted, they won that game, but the reason they're in these games, the reason why they were, beating the Panthers is because they held them to 178. The reason why they beat the Bucks is because they shut them out. Ditto the Jets. It really wasn't the offense. It's been the defense. How far can this defense carry the team? Maybe against the banged up Bucks, but I just don't think they're going to be able to do that against the Cardinals, against the Rams, against the Cowboys or the Packers. I know they beat the Packers week 1. I know. Are you disagreeing? You're smirking.
I'm just saying they really shut down the Cowboys offense. It was 6 turnovers against Dallas that decided that game. I don't know. I want this team in the playoffs because I think they can make things really, really interesting.
I don't think they're going to shut down the Dallas offense in Dallas, and that's where they would be playing. So, but I'm not being biased there because I've already told you how I feel about certain aspects of the Cowboys offense. Philadelphia Eagles at 14, big win for that team. You want to talk, we have talked many times about the Bengals and exceeding expectations. I think the Eagles are a little bit the NFC version of the Bengals. Nobody thought the Eagles were going to the playoffs this year. I would guess that over 50% of the football community thought Philadelphia was actually going to finish in last place.
I just want people to remember back to this time last year when it was all the hand wringing over them tanking in week 17 against Washington or against the Giants and how that's going to ruin their culture. Well, all that ended up doing is giving them the 6th pick in the draft, but they ended up trading to Miami to gain an additional 1st-round pick to now that they can use to continue to build the roster. And, the culture's fine because they're in the playoffs. So I know sometimes tanking sounds gross and it seems like it would be bad for your football team, but, hey, sometimes it ultimately doesn't matter. And it ends up being the thing that you need to take the next step.
I'm talking about fans actively rooting for their team to lose.
Oh, I did that last year. By the way, I did that last year.
Yeah, and you didn't like the Cowboys pick, did you?
No, but look what they ended up doing. They ended up drafting at number 10 or picking at 10. They were able to trade down, grab additional picks to restock their defense and still get a good player. So it helped.
Okay, but you told me linebackers don't matter.
Yeah, but edge rushers do.
That's a nice way. Okay. I let you get away with so much. I need to start holding your feet to the fire on some of these opinions. Chargers at 13. This is the game I mentioned earlier. You wanted to see them play earlier in the year. I think seeing Justin Herbert in the playoffs would be really exciting, but you know what? They got work to do. And I think this game this weekend is really exciting. Chargers, Raiders playing for the postseason.
Yeah, I'm in a difficult spot here because obviously I run a Raiders site for USA Today, but you know how much I like the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
Kind of want the Chargers in the playoffs, especially if they can play the Chiefs in round 1. I think that's just from an entertainment standpoint, the best game. I still like this Chargers team. I think they're really fun.
I think what's really key for the Chargers this week, and this is going to sound like old school football talk, but I actually think their run defense really needs to be on point against the Raiders. Derek Carr, as much as I defend him, he has not been playing hot. He's been playing when he needs to, but if you look at their games, he's had some really rough patches. They use Josh Jacobs a lot against the Colts. If the Chargers can shut him down and make Derek Carr beat them, he's probably going to throw them a ball or two.
Yep.
It's just a matter of the Chargers catching it, right?
Yep.
And taking advantage of those opportunities. I would say the same thing about the next team, Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen is going to throw you a ball or two. As you mentioned, he had multiple interceptions against Atlanta. We talked about the J.C. Jackson dropped pick 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. That could have been the difference in that game. 12 feels right to me, Marcus, but I think most people would disagree and say I have them too low.
I think you have them at the right spot, and I cannot wait to bet against the Bills in the first round of the playoffs.
Wow. Okay. Just to kind of review here. So we've got the Raiders at 16, Saints at 15, Eagles at 14, Chargers at 13, Bills 12. These are kind of our fringe playoff teams, although the Bills are not a fringe team. They're winning the AFC East, but they didn't necessarily dominate a Falcons team that hasn't looked good, that's playing in, crummy weather on the road. I think the Bills should have handled them, Marcus. That's what we all want to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I still don't know what to think of that team. I've got the 49ers at 11 ahead of them. If you want to make the case Buffalo's better, I know you wouldn't, but I could see where other people would. The 49ers were tough also to rank. They beat a Texans team that's not very good at their place. Trey Lance had nice moments in the game. Is he the quarterback going forward? It appears that way. I've got him behind Cincinnati at 10, spoiler alert, even though San Francisco beat them a few weeks ago head to head. I was just so impressed with Cincinnati's win. Is this the right spot for the 49ers? Because it sounds like you think they're going to be at home.
I do, and I think that's more just because they play the Rams this week, and that's a game the Rams need to win the division and host a playoff game. I think the 49ers are really good, but they're probably the best team that's going to get left out of the playoff picture. But we'll see.
Would have been helpful if the Cardinals lost against the Cowboys. But
would have been.
I think the 49ers, if they get into the tournament, are still a very scary team because the style of play that they have and that they will run the football on you. They'll use their wide receivers to run the football, Debo, obviously. And I still like their defense, and I like their head coach. I think this is an ascending team still. It'll be really fascinating to see what they do in the offseason and also Trey Lance's future. But I'm not giving up on them for the postseason yet, bud. Not doing it. Bengals at 10.
And I'll just say really quickly, if they do make the postseason, they're going to be a really tough out. It would not shock me at all if we see them like in the divisional round of the playoffs leading into the fourth quarter. This is a good team.
So here's your darling team, the Bengals at 10. And I mean, that was a huge win for them against Kansas City, though. If you're going to do a lot of complaining about refs, when it comes to the Cowboys,
it was terribly officiated. The Bengals got a lot of beneficial calls in that one. And if you're a Chiefs fan, you have a right to be upset.
Which is why I didn't downgrade the Chiefs, which we'll get to. But still I think you can have calls go your way and still have an impressive win.
Sure.
And to me, this was an impressive win for the Bengals offense. The Chiefs did have an 11-point lead on them at one point. So the Bengals defense did make some plays in this game. Do you worry about the Bengals defense, though, in the tournament?
No, it's actually one of the things I don't worry about. I worry about the offensive line because we saw, again, Joe Burrow got banged up. He wasn't even able to finish this game, right? They had to have their backup quarterback come in to take the final snap. So I don't think the defense is what's going to make it so this team doesn't win the AFC. I think it's going to be the offensive line.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think the defense will hurt them in the AFC part of this. But if the Bengals do make it to the Super Bowl, I would have a hard time picking them because of what I think their competition is going to be. And we do have to look at this team as a Super Bowl team.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, though, look at how they played against the Packers earlier this year. They did a fantastic job against Aaron Rodgers. So if they get into a game against Tampa Bay or Green Bay or somebody like that, I think their defense has enough playmakers to hang with them.
Well, you kind of read my mind a little bit because I kind of just wanted to see, the Bengals special teams looks and McPherson, how he was doing kicking the ball this year. Because if you go back to that Packer game, special teams on both sides was atrocious.
Yeah.
That was one of the wildest games of the last few years, if you ask me. Be interesting to see if they actually did play in the Super Bowl.
Think about how much that game impacted both conferences, though, because if the Bengals win, they're the number one seed right now in the AFC. Yeah. If the Packers lose, they are not the number one seed. They're probably the 2, 3, maybe even the 4 seed. So just a huge game earlier in the season that maybe we didn't put enough stock into.
Hey, that's what's great about football is they all matter. Honestly, that's why I didn't want them to go to 17 games. I think the games matter more when it's 16. We'll go to Dallas at number 9. I did drop Dallas substantially. I dropped them 4 spots, but when you're in the top 10 and you play poorly, that can happen. And the teams around them played better. I didn't put Cincinnati over Dallas, and I certainly could have done that. I realize there were bad calls in this game. I thought DeMarcus Lawrence was held when Kyler Murray was scampering out of the end zone to make a sideline throw. I can't remember if Lawrence was actually, or if Murray was actually in the end zone, but if that holding was in the end zone, it would have been a safety.
I don't think he was. I think he was outside of the pocket. I think he was, the hold happened in the end zone, but he was outside of the pocket.
Right. And the fumble at the end, I recognize that New York probably could have buzzed down, but I totally see why the referee on the field missed it. I think we all thought that the runner was that Chase Edmonds. Knee was down. I don't feel like that's the only fumble we should be talking about in this game. And I will leave it at that. And I hate this for Michael Gallup. He seems like a good dude. He's probably my favorite player on the team. I hate it.
Yeah, I didn't think Dak Prescott played all that well in this game. I know the stats would say that he was fine. He missed some guys. The fumble that you're referencing was huge. It gave the Cardinals an additional field goal. They need him to play better if they want to go far into the playoffs. If they even want to get out of round one, they need him to play better. And I think he will. I think he just had a bad game against the Cardinals.
Courtney, you noticed that when one of Marcus's favorite guys doesn't play well, the voice kind of goes to more of a empathetic tone.
Okay, hold on. I just criticized a guy that I like.
I think he'll play better. I think it's just an anomaly, guys.
No, I said, listen, he's not. He's been in a slump for the last month. I know the Washington game, he was good, but other than that, they've struggled.
Do we have any copyright infringement if we play some James Ingram or Air Supply underneath Marcus giving his analysis, just to kind of have, good soft vibes? It's all right. Actually, I don't think Dak played that bad. I just think that fumble was a huge play in the game. It needs to be talked about. But Dak certainly wasn't awful. I think most of his missed throws were early in the game, Marcus. And I thought he did a great job on the drive after that. Came back, showed a lot of resilience. I'll give him credit for that. I love the Cedric Wilson throwback play. I think they've run that 3 times this year. Pretty cool.
It's worked every time.
Yeah. By the way, Cowboys defense beat handily in this game. Not a great look. Let's go to number 8 as we get into our kind of elite teams. Tennessee Titans had to do it, Marcus. I know at times we wondered how they've been doing it, but hey, they have earned that number 1 seed. You've got Mike Vrabel as your coach of the year. I love the grittiness of this team. I want to give the players a lot of credit. I want to give Ryan Tannehill a lot of credit because it has not been easy for him this year. And yet he's come back every time, speaking of resilience. And that was the first time he was speaking of. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is the number 1 team right now in the AFC in terms of, seeding. We just got done singing all the praises, and yet you have them as the 4th best team in the AFC in your power rankings. So how much credit do you really want to give them, Elliot?
Until Derrick Henry comes back, this is where they are. But let me tell you, they're scary.
They are scary, right?
I think the Titans with Derrick Henry can beat anybody, but they've got to have A.J. Brown at 100%, man. A.J. Brown is so important to that team. They're just a different team when he plays well. He's just a great football player, really. Arizona Cardinals at 7. When we talk about wide receivers being out, the Cardinals played without DeAndre Hopkins. They went in there. That was an impressive showing. Offense, defense, special teams, and I'm going to say it, coaching. That was a well-coached Arizona football team on a number of occasions. I thought Cliff Kingsbury did the right thing. The fake punt, forcing Dallas through a change of personnel to use their timeout. I'm throwing it to you because I know you're still upset about this game.
Did you know that Kyler Murray played high school football at AT&T?
Oh, gosh, before? Yeah. No, I didn't know that because I was too busy learning that Jerome Bettis is from Detroit and his final game was in that.
Yeah. So, hey, listen, I've been a big supporter of the Cardinals all year long. I think they should be higher in your power rankings. I think we can move on.
Okay. Did you know Antonio Gates played basketball?
Yeah. So did Jimmy Graham. I didn't learn that until this week.
Really? Wow. In this league, Marcus. Okay. So the Colts at 6. This was another tough team to rank. We both have thought the Colts were a contender if they could get into the postseason. I don't think either one of us really thought they were going to lose to the Raiders. I know you thought the Raiders were going to be game for sure. You talked about that on our Picks podcast. Where would you put the Colts right now? Because I still think this is a really good team. If everything is kind of going right.
Yeah.
Obviously, we didn't think Carson Wentz was going to play. Then all of a sudden there's a change in the COVID policy. He's able to play. It's hard. It's hard to know how good this team is.
I've got this little test when it comes to a quarterback. When you're rooting against a team, are you afraid when they drop back to throw the ball? Because I'm rooting for the Raiders in this game. Every single time they didn't hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor or Nyheim Hines, I felt like it was a win for the Raiders.
Yeah.
And that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the quarterback, right? One of Carson Wentz's touchdowns in this game hit Casey Hayward directly in both of his hands, bounced off to his helmet, and went to T.Y. Hilton. I love everything about this Colts team except their quarterback. And I think that's ultimately going to be what keeps them either out of the playoffs or out of contending for a Super Bowl.
I'm looking at the numbers on the Colts Raiders. So they forced 2 takeaways. The Raiders still only got 85 yards on the ground. They used Jacobs, but this was not, I would not put this game on their defense. And where I'm going with that is that I think the Colts are still one of the most well-balanced teams when we look at, kind of everything, coaching, special teams, defense, offense.
I agree.
But this was a huge loss for them. Maybe I have them too high at 6. If you told me, hey, I'd put Cardinals 7, Titans 8, up above the Colts at 6, that's fine. It's just the Colts just beat the Cardinals in Arizona last week. It was very hard for me to rank the Cardinals above them based on 1 week. New England at 5, they get the huge win against Jacksonville. I still believe in the Patriots. If Mac Jones plays a good game with their defense, I still think the Patriots could beat just about anybody. The problem is you've got to have Mac Jones play a really great game for them to beat the elite competition.
Yeah, I don't think we have too many takeaways from this Jacksonville game. They dominated like they should have. And I think they're going to be a scary out in the playoffs, but it's all going to depend on what happens with Mac Jones. So we'll see.
I think there's one takeaway here, and that's with their division rival, the Buffalo Bills, that you can expect a certain level of play from the Patriots, even in a losing effort. You can't from the Bills. And so I still trust them more. That's why they're this much higher than Buffalo is. I guess I trust New England's B- game more than I trust Buffalo's B- game. If we're talking about an A game, then I trust Buffalo, but it's got to be an A game. I don't know what's going to end up with the Patriots this year, but if they're playing in a weather game where their defense gets to impose its will, look out. Yep. Rams at 4. They didn't run all over the Ravens like people said, but that doesn't mean that it was an unimpressive win. Matt Stafford had some bad throws early in this game. He threw a pick 6. But again, we talk about resilience. This is that time of year. Derek Carr did it. Even Dak Prescott did it on the drive after the fumble. Stafford came back in this game, and this is a good quality road win.
It is. And you know that I've liked the Rams for a lot of the season. I picked them to win the NFC West, and it looks like they're going to do it. But why do I still get the feeling there's just something missing with this team? And I can't put my finger on it. Like, they have all the pieces at the right spots. They've got the pass rusher. They've got the quarterback. They've got an elite shutdown corner in Jalen Ramsey. But what is it that I'm missing with this team from being, like a legitimate bona fide Super Bowl contender?
I don't know that you're going to like this answer, and I'm a little biased because I really like this guy. But Robert Woods was the heart and soul of that offense.
I think you might be right.
Cooper Kupp is prolific. He's prolific. But Robert Woods kind of did everything you want a football player to do. It's just, it's a team leader on the field.
Is it the toughness, right?
Yes, it's all of it. And I that would be my answer. Although I have to say, one of the most impressive plays I saw this weekend was Odell Beckham's catch on 4th down, where he held the ball up to make sure it got across the first down marker. And then he scored a touchdown. I want to say a play or two later. Great play by Odell for a very maligned player. Tampa Bay Bucks at 3. You mentioned their problems. Antonio Brown, that's been discussed ad nauseum. Godwin out. Leonard Fournette out indefinitely right now. We're not really sure how long he's going to be out. Scary time for them. I mean, they struggled against the Jets. Antonio Brown aside, it did take Tom Brady leading a game-winning drive for them to win that game.
Yeah, I think the Bucs are in a little bit of trouble, right? Like, they're just clearly not the same team they were earlier in the year. Like, the Jets just gashed them on the ground. Like, early on in the season, teams weren't even trying to run against them. And now I think you can have a little bit of success. I still think because they have Tom Brady and it's Bruce Arians, they could win the Super Bowl. I just feel a lot less confident about it now than I did 2 months ago.
And that's why they're at 3.
Yeah,
that's why they're at 3. And it's not just Bruce Arians. It's his staff. Yes, it's Brady. They still have some really strong defensive players. I like the leadership on this team. I just can't say that I trust the Rams more than I trust the Bucks. The Colts, we don't even know right now. The Patriots are playing with a rookie quarterback. I'm just kind of going down the line. We've seen Arizona play poorly, and Tennessee's without their best football player right now. That's why I've got Tampa Bay at 3. Certainly wasn't going to move them up. Kansas City, I don't think Kansas City played poorly in this game. Yes, their defense, this was a bad game for them, but their defense has been balling out for weeks. You're going to have games like this. And by the way, those are pretty good football players the Chiefs defense was going up against.
And I would also mention they lost their left tackle Orlando Brown in warmups, and then they lost their right tackle Lucas Niang to an injury. Like, when you lose 2 offensive tackles in a game like that, it's awfully hard to bounce back from that. The fact that they were even in that game, not even in that game, they controlled it for most of it, is somewhat surprising. They're fine. You don't need to worry about the Chiefs.
And we're not even mentioning the calls that so many people have complained about.
They're fine. So they're fine.
It's a road game against a playoff team, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're a good team, you're going to lose road games to ascending playoff teams, which is what the Bengals are. Last team here are the Green Bay Packers. They're still the best team in the league. They did what you're supposed to do against a team that's starting a backup. They won the game. They were in control the whole game. Lambeau Field in the postseason. You got to hand it to this organization with all the stuff that went on in the offseason, the drama between Jeopardy and Aaron Rodgers, the COVID stuff, and then, the pinky toe that we can't stop hearing about. They're number 1. I don't know. I don't know any argument I could make for putting a team ahead of Green Bay right now.
No, you have to put the Packers at number 1. And I think this team is going to win the Super Bowl. I think this is the year. I really do.
You think we get a Green Bay, Kansas City Super Bowl 1 repeat?
That's my gut. Although, man, I really like this Titans team. It would not shock me at all if it's Packers Titans in the Super Bowl.
Why did you not want a Colts Cowboys Super Bowl 5 rematch?
Of course I'd like that. I would love that. We also get the Dak Carson Wentz 2016 draft narrative. We get to talk about elite running backs all the time between Jonathan Taylor and Tony Pollard. Be a lot of fun.
Tony Pollard. Nice little dig. Nice little dig there. All right. Well, that is all 32 teams. Let's go over it one time real quick so you can know what we did here. Know our fine work. Jacksonville Jaguars at 32. A lot of questions starting in the front office for that team. Giants at 31. Ditto. 30 Panthers head coaching questions. 29 Houston Texans, going to do a lot of evaluation of Davis Mills this offseason, I would think. 28 Detroit Lions, would have been nice to have their starting quarterback. They got blown out. Jets at 27, very tough loss to the defending Super Bowl champs. Atlanta Falcons at 26, hung on there on the road against what is supposed to be a really good Buffalo Bills team. Seattle Seahawks at 25. They put up a 50 burger, I think, in that game. 24, the Washington football team, that's stadium is falling apart. 23, Denver Broncos. Marcus expects some changes at the top there, at least at the coaching top there. Minnesota Vikings, same thing. Coaching changes perhaps on the horizon, but maybe at quarterback. They're at 22. Chicago Bears at 21. More coaching changes potentially there, but they got to win. Miami Dolphins finally lost a game, ending their 7-game winning streak, so they couldn't make it 8. They are 20th. Cleveland Browns at 19. They will be home for the postseason, and they are shutting down their quarterback for the remaining week. Pittsburgh Steelers, looks like their quarterback is probably going to retire, Ben Roethlisberger. But, hey, they didn't have a losing season. They're 18. Baltimore Ravens at 17. Give Tyler Huntley mad respect. I think that guy's played really well for that team. Raiders at 16, showing a lot of character. They're still in it. New Orleans Saints, ditto. They are still in it. Give Sean Payton a lot of credit. Philadelphia Eagles are in the playoffs. They're playing the Cowboys this week. Good for them. Chargers, a big game against the Raiders. I've got them just 3 spots ahead of the Raiders. At 12, I've got the Buffalo Bills. As I said earlier, they're supposed to be a good team. We don't really know what to make of them. San Francisco 49ers at 11. They could be home for the postseason. The Bengals will not be home. They are a bona fide contender. They are at 10. You could make the argument that I could have put them over the Cowboys at 9, but I did drop the Cowboys precipitously from 5 to 9. Tennessee Titans, number 1 seed, but 8th in your hearts. Marcus doesn't agree with it. Arizona Cardinals at 7. Indianapolis Colts at 6. You can make the argument they should be lower. New England Patriots, that great defense, at 5. The Rams are at 4. The Bucs are at 3. I could have moved the Bucs down. I just don't know that I trust any of those teams more than them. Kansas City at 2, Green Bay at 1. I think that's probably your Super Bowl, but Marcus, I will give you the last word, especially if that's not the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question. We'll turn this back onto you. Of all the teams that are likely wild card teams, which one is the most likely to get to the Super Bowl?
Are we saying if they make it?
Yeah, I'm just saying if they make it.
Well, I think the 49ers are a scary team, but the problem is the 49ers are not in the AFC. If we drop the 49ers in the AFC, I'd feel a lot more confident. So I know where you want me to go on this. I know exactly. You want me to say the LA Chargers. So go ahead and just say it that you want me to say the LA Chargers.
No, I don't think it's the Chargers because that team outside of like 5 players is not very good, but I just love those 5 guys, right?
I know you're not going to say the Colts.
No, it's probably New England, right? Probably.
Yeah, I think I kind of already answered this really with just my analysis on the Patriots, why I had them at 5 and why I had Buffalo at 12 is because I trust New England's B- game. And I'm not trying to talk in circles. What I'm simply saying is if Mac Jones throws for 182 yards with no interceptions and 1 touchdown, I could see the Patriots still beating almost anybody because they run the ball, they play smart, they have good clock management, they play great defense. And I think they can play in any weather condition. So I would agree with you. And that's kind of where I was leading earlier. Green Bay, we've talked about that. What scares us about Green Bay is that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to play an A game for them to win, Marcus. And that's how I look at New England. They don't have to play their very best game to win because they don't make a lot of mistakes.
I agree. I agree with you. I think the Patriots are the one team. 49ers, I think, are interesting. That is the one team that I think if Green Bay could say, hey, there's one team that we just don't want to play in the playoffs, I kind of think it's the 49ers is the squad they don't want to see.
Well, you could tell that's what I wanted to answer because that's where I wanted to go over the Patriots, but I just couldn't do it. And it's because the Patriots are in the AFC. That really is it for me. And here's the thing. Can the Bengals or the Chiefs beat any team in the NFC? Sure they can. It's just a numbers game. There's just more quality teams in the NFC to lose to than there are in the AFC. The propensity now, again, I think the wild card, and I'm doing the air quotes here if you're listening, in all of this is Derrick Henry, in my mind. How ready is he going to be to play? How rusty is he going to be? It's hard to stay in, quote, game shape and just plop in there into January football. That would be the one thing. I know they're not a wild card team, but I think Tennessee could beat anybody.
Yeah. I got some news about Derrick Henry that I'll share on Thursday's show. How about that for a teaser?
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah. Well, what's up? Why do you want to share it now?
Because I want people to come back and listen to it at the show on Thursday. So there you go.
All right. Marcus's sources say that Derrick Henry thinks Ben Roethlisberger isn't a very good quarterback.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm in.
There's our news. Did you walk around? You didn't walk around with your talk radio thing attached to your.
No, I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Today,
I couldn't listen to all the slobbering over Ben Roethlisberger today. I couldn't do it.
Slobbering. Is there any Pittsburgh Steeler you like? You don't even like TJ Watt as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
I think Cam Hayward's one of the best defensive players in the league. I think he's phenomenal.
That didn't look sincere.
It is. I think Hayward's. How can you not like Cam Hayward? I'm sorry, I keep saying Casey Hampton. It's Cam Hayward.
Probably because you can't get his name right. that would be one just slight.
Cam, listen. We're way over time. That's it for today's show, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back on Thursday.
Yeah, he's at Marcus_Mosher. I'm at Harrison NFL. Hope you enjoy the rankings. We'll be back on Thursday picking games around this time, 12 o'clock Pacific. And hey, thanks for joining us. We'll see y'all.